Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro. Today we're taking a trip to France with La Fille Absinthe. Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro Kyle. Thank you all so much for joining me yet again. Please continue liking these videos, sharing them with your friends, and subscribing. I really want to highlight how important and valuable subscribing is because every time people subscribe to this channel, it gets me closer and closer to my goal. Getting to 1,000 subscribers opens up a world of different opportunities for me through YouTube, and it makes it a lot easier to continue making these videos, sharing these thoughts with you guys, and helping to build the community and the brand. So thank you so much for your help. Today we're going in a bit of a different direction thanks to Dave and Joseph at Vine and Table. Vine and Table in Carmel's a great place to buy all kinds of spirits. They've been really helpful with this channel. They've been supportive of me in ways I didn't expect, so I really appreciate everything they've done for me. We're going to be drinking something that I've never really had before. It's actual, genuine French absinthe. Now, I've had different anise-flavored liqueurs, but never actual absinthe. In 1915, France actually banned the production and sale of absinthe. Part of this was because it was known to have these hallucinogenic properties, it was thought to be this dangerous alcohol, and to sort of be a menace to society. Think about the time, this is very close to Prohibition in the United States, this is close to the prohibition of cannabis in the United States, this is an era of banning substances that were seen to be lesser or fail some sort of morality test. The most famous users of absinthe were artists, and people who were sort of seen as on the fringes of society, so it gained sort of a bad reputation. It's also incredibly high proof. The absinthe I'll be tasting today is 68% alcohol. Now this product, La Fille Absinthe Parisienne, was actually developed using an old French recipe from the turn of the 19th century that had sort of been lost to the ages and was redeveloped by one individual. George Rowley is sort of thought as the grandfather of the modern absinthe movement, particularly in Europe, because he spent so much time working with the EU to develop new absinthe laws that would allow people to develop and drink and produce absinthe in the EU. He was the first person to distill absinthe in France since the ban in 1915, and he did that all the way in 2000. This recipe in particular, La Fille Absinthe Parisienne, that I'll be drinking today, was developed in coordination with the French Absinthe Museum. Now this is a traditional French-style verte absinthe, which just means it's green. And that green is coming from the maceration of herbs in the product itself. So the tint is actually developed from the herbs. It's not a dye that makes it this green color, although a lot of people believe it's a dye. It's not. There are 9 herbs and spices that go into this particular absinthe. And some of the ones that are more popular you're going to have heard of before. There's star anise or star anise, depending on who you talk to. There's fennel, and there's also the grand wormwood, which is the most controversial ingredient in some ways. Now the name La Fée is actually the fairy, translated from French. People have sort of called absinthe the green fairy or the fairy or something like that, referring to the hallucinogenic properties of the wormwood. Now wormwood, which is a key ingredient in most absinthe, actually contains a hallucinogenic ingredient. So yes, there are traces of a hallucinogen in this product, but traces is the key word. The EU actually regulates how much of the hallucinogenic chemical in wormwood is allowed in the absinthe. So they don't measure the wormwood content, they measure the actual hallucinogen. The amount of modern absinthe it would take to hallucinate would be probably an entire bottle, and you'd be so drunk that the hallucinations from the absinthe itself might seem to pale in comparison to the alcohol poisoning you likely gave yourself. So whatever the tradition of absinthe, we've now seen a revival in the absinthe market. And people are wanting to try it, people are wanting to drink it, and there is some curiosity about the hallucinogenic experience, but most of what you're looking at is this interesting herbal liqueur. That's something not commonly seen in most markets. It's sort of just starting to creep into popularity in the EU and the US. Now, how do you drink absinthe? Well, I've got this bottle here. I will probably try a little bit of it neat at 68%. You can technically drink absinthe neat, but it's not really meant to be drank that way. There's a very common preparation, which I'm going to do today, which involves using some water and some sugar. Now, if I wanted to be really fancy about it, I would take a absinthe spoon, I would drip cold water over the spoon so that the sugar would go into the water, then go into the glass, which had absinthe in it. And that whole drip slow process would keep going until I was about 4 to 6 times more water with sugar in it than absinthe, and then I would drink that glass. That's a lot of work. I'm not going to go through all that, and you don't really have to. I mean, it's a great show, but it's not necessary for the flavor and the experience. So what's on the back of the bottle of the La Fée Absinthe explains put 4 parts water to 6 parts water, depending on how strong you want it. I'm going to go 4 parts water to 1 part absinthe, and then add a sweetness to taste. Now, they don't want you to use granulized sugar because that's not going to blend in well. I'm using a simple syrup, which it's a pretty easy process to make. 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar, simmer and stir on your stove until it's dissolved. Simple syrup, super easy. Also, you'll notice I'm not using Glencairn because I'm going to be using quite a bit of liquid, 5 ounces of liquid before I add any sugar. I want to make sure I've got a glass that can hold all of that, and that will still allow me to have a tasting experience that's meaningful. Without further ado, let's go ahead and pour out this absinthe. Now, one thing I noticed right off the bat is the smell just out of this little jar is much more herbal than I'm used to with like a Pernod. Pernod is, an anise liqueur, but it's not an absinthe. And so it just smells like anise. There's definitely an anise quality to this, but there's a lot of other herbal notes that are coming to the forefront. There's a sweet cinnamon, there's an anise. I actually almost get a little vanilla. The fennel really starting to show up as well. So let's go ahead and pour this out. Now, I'll pour in the water in a second and try to do a proper creation, but just for kicks, though, before I pour in the water, I'm going to take a little nip of this liqueur. Very strong nose. You can smell the alcohol. I get a little bit of a candy cane sweetness, actually. It's very herbal and a little bit floral, too. It's more multifaceted than most anise liqueurs I've had in the past, so that's something that's kind of fun. I didn't really expect. I expected it to be very similar in terms of its complexity. There's a lot going on in this. Let's take a little nip, and then I'll do a proper preparation. Whew. Yeah, that's not how you're supposed to drink this. It's not bitter until the mid-palate finish, more like a whiskey. Oh, and there's a real strong Kentucky hug. Maybe this is a French hug? I don't know. But definitely strong, prominent. You definitely can see it's a quite powerful alcohol. There's a lot of herbal notes. There's a mintiness. There's a sweetness. Obviously, you have the anise. Obviously, you have a fennel. I get a little bit of a cinnamon still. Cinnamon sticking around. Maybe like a raw nutmeg as well. A lot of good herbal spices in here. So let's go ahead and properly prepare it. Now, 4-to-1, I'm going to add 4 ounces of water. You're supposed to add it slowly, but that's not going to happen right now. And you see how cloudy it got. That's supposed to happen. It's supposed to turn from that clear green to this cloudy white. And part of what's fun about watching the drip over with the sugar is that cloudiness sort of changes and evolves. Now, with this simple syrup, I'm just going to add to my taste. I'm going to start with half a teaspoon, see if that's enough. First off, when I poured the water in, it really opens up this oaky, woody, that wormwood quality really stands out. I think the wormwood is a woodiness in this drink. But the herbs all really open up. When I took that little smell and that little nip of the pure absinthe at 68%, it was all so condensed and tight and just didn't let you in at all. It got alcohol, you got an anise, you got an herb, but it was all really tightly wound. Putting it with the water and a little bit of sugar, it really opens up. It becomes big and woody and creamy. And honestly, the anise kind of takes a back seat when you prepare it like this. I still can smell it, but I'm getting way more of these other herbal notes. A little bit of floral, like a dried flower note. Still have that sort of cinnamon. It really kind of smells like I'm in a field, like maybe a hay field. I get that kind of grass quality, that grain quality, but it's very subtle. There's also a definite floral note, more prominent floral actually, over that grass granular note. I get some vanilla as well, just like a hint of like vanilla bean. Really good. All right, let's go ahead and taste this preparation. Oh, that's interesting. It's creamy. That's a really refreshing, that's crisp and refreshing. It's creamy, it's slightly sweet, it's very gentle on the palate. That's really interesting. There's almost no bitterness. When you add the water and you add the sugar to it, all that bitterness goes away. In my opinion, there were a lot of challenging elements to this absinthe before we added the water and the sugar to it. It was bitter, it was strong, it was sharp. All of that's been softened out. It's very gentle, very caressing. It's creamy, it's herbal. It's only a little sweet. I only added half a teaspoon of simple syrup. I think you can make it sweeter for somebody who wants a sweeter drink, but because I'm used to the more challenging flavors with high proof whiskeys, and I think about it in those terms, I'm not looking for a sweetness necessarily. I'm not looking for a sugar sweetness, certainly. So just enough to take the edge off really gives you this wonderful balance. But yeah, creamy, herbal, slightly sweet, slightly floral, a little bit of bitterness on the tongue in the finish. And it kind of leaves you with the anise flavor. The anise is kind of left over as an aftertaste when you do the preparation like this. That's really interesting. I'm definitely glad I gave this a try. I'm not sure I would make it a daily thing, but this is really well suited for the end of a specific kind of meal. I think if you have something very sweet, or if you have something very savory, so like a steak or like a cheesecake, something where it's these big sweet or big savory flavors, this would be a wonderful thing to pair it with because it's sharp and it's herbal and it really has this beautiful balance that you could pull out of other flavors. So this would be a great aperitif. It would be a great digestif. Before or after a meal, I think this is a really good place to head. You'll either intro or exit from a good meal. I hope you guys will consider giving it a try. I think it's worth exploring your palate, and this is a really cool place to go. If you like products like, I think Willet comes to mind, which they tend to make a more herbal whiskey, this is probably something you will enjoy because you can't keep your mind in the whiskey world now. But if you think about it like a cocktail, this would be right up your alley because I think a lot of times people who like whiskey don't want their cocktails to be as sweet as they typically are. And this gives you a really interesting, easy way to adjust the sweetness level of your drink. So thank you all so much for watching. Thanks to Vine and Table yet again for providing the sample. I hope you guys have a good time. I'm going to try to not make as big of a mess as I typically do, and I'll keep doing it like a professional. Cheers.